Yeah. So we begin by dedicating this session and this entire course to our founder Acharya of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness, His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. So we begin with some prayers just to invoke auspiciousness. The wordings are there. I will say it, and then later on, next time, once you are familiar with the prayers, you all can also join in together. Okay. Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. That's it. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vigna Vinasha Narasimhaiti Namine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langaitim Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Vande Shri Guru Dinatarinam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanya Mishwaram. That's it. So we'd like to introduce our deities in our temple. So this is our Old Klang Road temple in Tamanyal. We have two sets of deities. So this is one set. So they are Sri Gauranga and Nithyananda. So Gauranga and Nithyananda are the incarnations of Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram, who in the most recent incarnation, which is about 530 years ago. And this is a pastime of Lord Chaitanya and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Nithyananda, who came to show basically how to, they are the ones who basically propagated the Hare Krishna chanting Mahamantra, and they showed how to basically follow the path of the Bhagavad Gita. So we offer our respectful obeisances to Sri Sri Nitai Sundar Gaurahari. So it's also customary whenever we begin Bhagavad Gita, we start off with glorification of the Bhagavad Gita. So there are lots of glorifications of the Bhagavad Gita from various scriptures. This particular one is a poem written by Sripad Sankaracharya. Sripad Sankaracharya is a very famous personality, and he has written these 7 verses. So we are going through the first verse today. Gita Shastram Idam Punyam Yah Patet Prayata Puman Vishnu Padam Avapnoti Bhaya Shoka Divarjitaha. One who, with a regulated mind, recites with devotion this Bhagavad Gita scripture, which is the bestower of all virtue, will attain to a holy abode, such as Vaikunta, the residence of Lord Vishnu, which is always free from the mundane qualities based on fear and lamentation. So he starts off with this verse where he's saying that if one is able to regulate ourselves and with devotion study this Gita scripture, right, then we should be able to purify ourselves, and we should at the end of our lives able to attain Vaikunta Loka. Vaikunta means, Kunta means misery, and Vai means no misery. So Vaikunta means no misery. So this is the abode of Lord Vishnu. It is free of fear and lamentation. So this is how Sripad Sankaracharya glorifies the Bhagavad Gita. So before we talk about the Bhagavad Gita, just like to have a short sort of an ice-breaking session, since we are all new and we are all meeting each other for the first time, virtually at least. So at least you can see me. But anyway, I'm sure that we will eventually get to know all of us. It's a journey. It's an 18-day journey. Actually, this Gita Gyan course is level 1 course is for 18 days. And later on, once the level 1 is done, we also have level 2 if you are interested to continue with us. So with level 2, that will be a weekly course. So it will be a once a week session. We can decide on a suitable time once the level 1 is done with. And you may have deeper questions, you may have deeper things you'd like to discuss, and it's something which we will continue with the Bhagavad Gita and also other scriptures as well. So that is at level 2. Some interesting topics are there also, and like that we can go on, and as we go we can get to know each other better. So because time is a bit short, we don't want to, I know it's a bit of a sacrifice for everyone to actually commit this 1 hour daily. So thank you so much for that though. And we'd like to get on with the session, and we can also use the WhatsApp group to communicate further. Okay, so with that, let's continue. Right, so we'd just like to ask you all, so since we are starting a small ice-breaking session, what are you searching for in life, or in this journey of life, or in this existence? What are we all ultimately looking for? Right, we are think about this question. What are we ultimately looking for? And then it will be nice if we can have some response, right? Doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong, just basically, we have a point which I want to pass at the end of this. So let's just hear what everybody is thinking. Anyone?
Happiness, Prabhu.
Oh, Naveen, okay, happiness. Thank you. Anyone? Oh, by the way, I should just mention before we start how we address each other. So generally, for men, we address each other as Prabhu, right? And for ladies, we address each other as Mataji. Mataji means mother. So therefore, it's a nice way of how we can address each other. Right. So let's continue. Right. Someone says, Shobana Mataji, she says, peace of mind. Yes, this is a very good answer. Happiness is also a very good answer. Mr. Krishnan has replied. Any other thing? Nobody wants to say money?
Namaskara, Prabhu.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm still thinking, but I think what is important for me will be health, good health, but I'm still searching, basically.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that answer. Yes, health is definitely very important as well, right? So when we say health, we also would want to say wealth because it sort of rhymes, isn't it? Anything else? Anything else we have missing?
I would say, Prabhu, it would be to free myself from my egos.
Okay, that's a very, very interesting point. Freeing ourselves from our ego. Is this ultimately what we are looking for in all the actions that we are doing, from our daily life, from every single thing that we are doing? Ultimately, we are looking for this one thing, right? So before we continue, any other point you'd like to share? Anyone?
Prabhu, my name is Rajan Prabhu.
Yes.
Well, I know for a fact that I'm not the body. So I'm really interested to find out what is the self, you see.
Okay.
I mean, that's my yeah.
So you're saying that you're ultimately looking for answers. Can I say that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So that's very profound. So it's very nice. So someone said wealth, but if we are looking for wealth, ultimately, no, actually, no one said wealth. I said wealth. Okay, we have Mr. Krishnan, health, some wealth, and time. Yes, we are looking for time. Time is something I can really bond with everybody. Okay, so I asked the next question. Why are we looking for wealth? And why do we need time? And why do we need health? Surely, okay, let's assume we've got the time and we've got the wealth and we've got the health. What are we going to do with these things now? Right? So if you could say that this is a means to an end, right? We are looking for these things in order to get something. And then there was someone, Miss Shobana, I think, who said that peace of mind. Oh, yes. So ultimately, you want peace of mind because you want to do anything. You want to be peaceful. All right. Otherwise, it's everything else that you do, you are worried. So you want to be free from worry. You want to be free from misery. So therefore, peace of mind. So that's a better answer than health, wealth, or time. Eventually, we want these things. One could argue that way. But one could also say, then there was an answer. I'm looking to free myself from the ego. So it's a very profound thing. We will discuss these things in the Bhagavad Gita, but we will not talk about the false ego at this point. We will go on because we have a lot of new people as well. So we will discuss this, but rest assured that we will address this eventually. Then someone said happiness, right? So I think that would be quite a good answer, because ultimately we want to use health, we want to use wealth, we want to use time, and we also want peace of mind so that we can enjoy happiness, right? Would you agree on that? And what this happiness takes, the form of this happiness which it takes, right? It can be different things. Like for some of us, we want to have happiness with our family. With some of us, we want to have happiness with, mainly we want to have good relationships. So if you boil it down, if you actually look, most of us are, we have some experience in life. So if you really boil it down, ultimately, we are looking for some kind of relationship. So because everything else, the happiness is not really so great. And if you really look at it, the quality of our relationships is really what gives us true happiness, you could say, right? But the problem then is that happiness in this world, these relationships in this world are not perfect. So we have situations where, we have various types of relationships, right? But it's not perfect, right? Can we ever say that we've had a relationship which is absolutely exactly what we ever wanted, that without any kind of disappointments? We have disappointments with relationships, do we not? So we have gone through those, I'm sure. Even with the best of relationships, we have gone through disappointments. And more importantly, these relationships don't last. So we can think about that. It doesn't last. Even the best of relationships, eventually, when we take birth, right, everything in the end has to die. So then there comes separation. So when there is separation, then there is lamentation. And when there is lamentation, then there is misery. So therefore, where then is that happiness that we are looking for? So these are some important questions which the Gita will give very nice, beautiful answers. And part of that answer is the false ego. We want to be free from this ego. That is one of the ways in which we can attain this happiness. So we will talk about all these things eventually. So I ask you to bear with me. Many things to cover in the Gita, right? So basically, everyone is hankering for happiness because by nature, we are happy. So Anandamayo Vyasat, Vedanta Sutra says, this is basically, we are the spirit souls, and we are naturally, the nature of the spirit soul is to be blissful. The spirit soul cannot be otherwise. So because the nature of the spirit soul is blissful, we are looking for that bliss everywhere we go, right? We'll speak more about this in chapter 2. Okay, so this is just an introduction. So Bhagavad Gita will help us to understand very important questions. Questions such as, who am I? Why am I here? So we have, right, why am I born here? Why are we particularly born in this family, in this ethnicity, in this society, in this country particularly? So why am I here? So what is the purpose? And eventually, we also understand that we are also suffering. Why am I suffering? So especially nowadays, we can see it very clearly. It's very much put in stark contrast, right, with the COVID pandemic and a lot of issues happening around the world, mental illness and so forth. So why am I suffering? Now, it's interesting. We spend all our lives looking for happiness. We search for happiness in various ways. Every activity that we do is basically ultimately aiming towards achieving this happiness. So we spend looking for it. But do we look for suffering? Do we search for suffering? Do we try our best to get, do we say that I don't want happiness also? I want a bit of suffering. So I want to ensure there is a bit of suffering in my life. Do we actively look for it? We don't look for it, but we get it anyway. It comes automatically. So if suffering comes automatically without us looking for it, would it be too much to say that happiness also would come automatically without looking for it, without us looking for it? So these are some very important questions which are worth us to think about. These answers are also there in the Bhagavad Gita at the end of the session. Is it even possible to have permanent solutions to our problems? Can we have a permanent solution? I want to be permanently happy. I want everything to be permanent. So is there possibility in this transient world? Can we do that? So that also can be answered. Can I have a perfect relationship? A relationship which never disappoints, which is eternal and everlasting, which is ever increasing in bliss, which is so meant for me. Can I have such a relationship? Bhagavad Gita will give the answer. And what on earth am I here for? Do I have a goal in life? Do I have an ultimate objective? Many of us sometimes spend a lot of our time chasing after material ambitions, and we chase over, and those of us who are a bit more introspective, we start to think about chasing after peace, chasing after health, the more important things in life. But what is the ultimate goal of it all? So this is another question we can answer. Can we ever have everlasting happiness? So all these and much more is promised in the Bhagavad Gita. So what is this Bhagavad Gita? So Bhagavad Gita is actually a very, very unique scripture. It is, if you ask most people in the world, right? If you say Islam, what is the scripture for Islam? Quran, right? Everybody knows that. First thing that pops in their mouth. If someone asks, Christianity, Bible, Judaism, Torah, right? Like that. Sikhism, Guru Granth Sahib. So like that, there are scriptures all over the world. And if you talk about Hinduism in general, right, the most popular amongst this is arguably the Bhagavad Gita. Of course, one can say the Vedas, right? But usually the Vedas, there are many Vedas. Most people, you don't also know the names of those Vedas. So we have the 4 Vedas, the Rig, the Atharva, the Sama, the Yajur Veda, right? Like that. Then we have the Upanishads. In the Vedas, we have the Upanishad. There is actually a huge library. If you talk about Hinduism, we have a huge collection of scriptures. In level 2, we will talk about these scriptures in detail. the category and the breakdown and all that we will discuss. But this entire scripture, if you were to take the essence of all these scriptures, so many, right? It's actually said that the Vedas are like the manual of the universe. Now, this universe is big, is huge. So there are how to use this universe, how to go through with life. So therefore, this is like a manual of the universe. So, and if you are looking at the most important thing given in this Vedas, the essence of that is given in the Bhagavad Gita. It's given in two scriptures actually, Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. So in Bhagavad Gita, and we will talk about this later on also. So in Bhagavad Gita, it's also known as Gitopanishad. So why it's known as Gitopanishad? Because it is part of the Upanishads. Upanishads are like the cream of the Vedas. So Vedas talk about many things. It talks about dharma, it talks about artha, it talks about desire, how to attain things. It talks about agriculture. It even talks about fighting. How the art of war, Sun Tzu's art of war comes from the Dhanur Shastra, which is from the Vedas. So like that, there's Ayurveda, the art of medicine. There is Tapati Veda, the art of architecture. And then there is, so many, Nritya Shastra, the art of dance and music. So every sphere of life, it's there, descriptions are there in the Vedas, instructions. Art of cooking, even cooking is there in the Vedas. How to cook in a healthy, holistic way. So there is also Dharma, art of economics, like that. But there is also the art of happiness, how to attain the ultimate solutions of life. And these things are given in the Upanishads section of the Vedas. And the most important of these Upanishads are, the essence of it is collected in this Bhagavad Gita. And when was it spoken? 5,000 years ago. 5,000, a few hundred years ago, to be precise. How many verses? 700 verses of the Bhagavad Gita. So it actually is part of a bigger scripture called the Mahabharata. Now, Mahabharata is 100,000 verses. It is the largest scripture or largest work known on earth. And 100,000 verses of perfect, beautiful poetry. So one could ask, how is it possible? 100,000 verses of poetry. Have we written poetry in our lives? We would have written about 10 verses of poetry, 20 verses of poetry. But this is 100,000 verses of perfectly balanced, symmetrical poetry. And in this, who spoke this Bhagavad Gita? So there are three people who speak in this Bhagavad Gita. There is majority of these verses, actually four people, sorry. Majority of these verses, 574 verses are spoken by Lord Sri Krishna, 84 verses by Arjuna, 41 verses by Sanjaya. Who is Sanjaya? Who is Dhritarashtra? Who is Arjuna? We will discuss shortly. And where was this Bhagavad Gita spoken? It was spoken in the holy place of Kurukshetra, which is still existing today. So this is the map of India, and this is Delhi, right? It's the map of Uttar Pradesh, and in Uttar Pradesh, right, you have a small black spot here, that is Kurukshetra. So it's still there. We have holy places there still, many historical sites. In fact, there are many relics of the Pandavas also still kept in the museum of the Kurukshetra. So, and this, as I said, this Bhagavad Gita is coming inside the Mahabharata scripture. It's one of the chapters in the Mahabharata. Mahabharata, 100,000 verses, is divided into 5 parvas or 5 sections. And in one of those sections, one of the chapters in those sections is the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so that is a bit of a what do you call background on the Bhagavad Gita. So before we start, usually we recite this particular mantra before we start reading from the Bhagavad Gita. So you can repeat after me, repeat together with me 3 times. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So why do we say this mantra? We say it to beg for blessings, because this Bhagavad Gita is not an ordinary book. It is not something which we can just take and look at it and at the end of it think that we will know the answers for everything. No, it doesn't work like that. So it comes with the blessings of the Lord as well. So therefore we invoke the blessings of the Supreme Lord Bhagavate. Bhagavate means Bhagavan, comes from the word Bhagavan. Vasudevaya. So Krishna is Vasudevaya. Why? Because Krishna's father, Vasudeva and Devaki. So it's Vasudev. But in Sanskrit, the son of Vasudev, they will add a long R to it at the beginning. So Vasudev is the father. Vasudev is the son of Vasudev. And this Vasudev is Krishna. And he is referred to as Bhagavan. So Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we begin with chapter 1. So chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita is known as Arjuna Vishada Yoga in Sanskrit. So what does that mean? It means the yoga where Arjuna is put into illusion. He is put into lamentation. Now, Arjuna is a very great personality. He's a pure devotee of the Supreme Lord. And the Lord sometimes uses his devotees in order to get something done. So therefore, the Pandavas were used to execute the Mahabharata war for a particular purpose. And then in the main aspect of this is actually for the Bhagavad Gita to be spoken. So this Bhagavad Gita is one of the most important treatises ever spoken, which is meant for the benefit of all humankind. And in order to do this, Krishna purposely put Arjuna into illusion. So Arjuna behaved like as if he did not understand many things. So therefore, he will ask questions throughout, and then we will get all kinds of answers from Krishna. And these answers are actually meant for us, for all of us, for all humanity to benefit from. So therefore, Prabhupada, we are using the Bhagavad Gita, which is written by, which is translated by our founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. So it's called Bhagavad Gita as it is. So later I will show you what's the book, how it looks like and everything. So in that book by Prabhupada, where he translates the first chapter. He gives a title for the first chapter, Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. So it's like a beginning, setting the scene, one could say. Okay, so first chapter has 46 verses, and it begins with this verse 1.1. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharma kshetre kurukshetre samaveta yuyutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kim akurvata sanjaya. So a bit of guidance on how to pronounce the Sanskrit. So you see, if you see a dot underneath the R, like for example here, that means you stress the R. Dr. So dr, Dritarash. And if you see a line above the, usually a vowel, like A or E or U, then that means you pull it. So it's not Dhritarashtra, it's Dhritarash. So, and when you see a dot below the S, that means it's not S, it's SH. So Dhritarash, strong T, tra, Dhritarashtra. Okay, Uvacha, Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, Samaveta, Yuyutsavaha. Now, when there is a dot below the H, then it is ha, not just H. Yuyutsavaha, like that. Mamakaha Pandavaschaiva Kim Akurvata Sanjaya. So when there is a this sign over here on top of this accent on top of the N, then it is like a bit nasal. Sanyaya, 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 like that, a bit nasal in sound. So this is just to help you to pronounce correctly. So as you also go through and you read, you will be able to eventually get it and do it fast. So then the translation is, Dhritarashtra said, O Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do? So this question, now a number of things we have to give you the background before we can go into the chapter 1 in detail, right? So basically, if you know the story or the background of Mahabharata, so probably I need to give you a bit of background on Mahabharata. So let me just go through that background. So Mahabharata, who's Dhritarashtra? So Dhritarashtra is this king and he is born blind. So actually, he was supposed to be the king. He was the eldest. He was born blind, unfortunately. But because he was, and who was his father? The father of Dhritarashtra is Shantanu, Maharaj Shantanu. And Maharaj Shantanu, he had actually 2 wives. The first wife was Ganga Devi. Ganga Devi herself became the wife of Maharaj Shantanu. And by Ganga Devi, he had a son called Bhishma. And Bhishma is the first son of Maharaj Shantanu. Now, Bhishma, however, he took a vow not to ever marry, not to ever get married. And he also took a vow to give up the kingdom for the sake of his father's second wife. So what happened was, this Shantanu Maharaj, later on he married a second wife. This Ganga Devi, after giving birth to Bhishma, there's a long story behind it. Actually, there's a lot of stories behind it. We don't have time to go through. We only have about 1 hour and 15 minutes. So we will just go to the essence. And then later on in level 2 and so forth, we can discuss more once this course is over. So Bhishma, he after giving birth to Bhishma, Ganga Devi disappeared, and Maharaj Shantanu did not have a wife for a very long time. And then later on, Bhishma was returned to him from the heavenly planets, and Maharaj Shantanu, he wanted to get married to another woman, and this lady was called Satyavati. There's also a story behind her and everything. So special lady, but unfortunately, Satyavati, she put a condition. She said, if you marry me, I want that my children become the king after you. So because Bhishma is your firstborn, so would you agree to this condition? So Shantanu Maharaj was very upset. He didn't want to accept this condition. But Bhishma, such a wonderful son, when he saw Maharaj Shantanu so, love struck and everything, so he went to Satyavati and he struck the deal. He said, no problem. I will guarantee that I will give up my kingdom. But then Satyavati asked Bhishma. At that time, he wasn't called Bhishma. He was known as Devavrata. Right. Could I just ask everyone to have your phones muted? Okay, I will mute you, Mataji. So please don't mind. All right. Okay, so at that time, Bhishma, his name was Devavrata. That's his given name at birth. And this Devavrata, he spoke to Shantanu Maharaj, he spoke to Satyavati, and then Satyavati said, you are giving up the kingdom, fine, but what about your children? If you have children, then they might challenge the kingship. They might be a challenge to my sons. So, what can you do about that? So then Devavrata immediately, without hesitation, said, then if that's the case, for the happiness of my father, I will give up marrying. So actually this was a very great, I will take a lifelong vow of celibacy. And in this way, there will not be any possibility of me having children. So when he said this, actually, flowers fell from the sky. The Devatas were glorifying Bhishma because he took such a great vow. Now, Bhishma was a Kshatriya. A Kshatriya means a warrior. Now, warriors are very, as a class, they are a very passionate people. So for a Kshatriya to take a vow of celibacy was a very, very great austerity. It's a very great vow. So therefore, and all just for the sake of pleasing his father. So therefore, he became known from that day onwards as Bhishma, one of great vow, one who took great vow. So therefore, he became known as Bhishma. So therefore, in this way, Shantanu Maharaj got married to Satyavati. I'm cutting the long story short. So this they got married, and after they got married, what happened? They had two children. One was called, okay, I'm putting the picture here. They had two children. One was called Vichitra Virya, and the other was, what's his name? Vichitra Virya and Chitrangada, right? So two sons, Vichitra Virya and Chitrangada. Now, Chitrangada and Vichitra Virya, anyway, eventually, long story short, both of them died, right? So I don't want to go into the details, but one of them, I think it is Chitrangada. He had two sons. Wait, let me just put the thing for you. Okay, this is the genealogy. So Chitrangada and Vichitra Virya. So you can see here the grandfather of all this dynasty is called Kuru. So that's why it's called the Kuru dynasty. And Kuru's son is Shantanu. And Shantanu and Ganga married. They had Bhishma. And then Shantanu and Satyavati, they got married. They had two sons, Chitrangada and Vichitra Virya. Now, this Satyavati, before she got married to King Shantanu, she actually had another relationship. It's not a relationship. It's actually a divine conception. And by Parashara Muni, a Muni. And this Parashara Muni and Satyavati, they had a child called Vyasa. So this is Vyasa Dev. So we won't talk about that at the moment. So, and we will go to the royal children, Chitrangada and Vichitra Virya. So this Chitrangada and Vichitra Virya, they unfortunately died early, before they could have children. So then what to do? Bhishma has taken a vow not to have children, and then the two princes who were supposed to continue the dynasty died. So how can the kingdom continue? So therefore, they called Vyasadev. Now Vyasadev was also the child of Satyavati and Parashara Muni. So therefore, they called Vyasadev, and Vyasadev was asked to impregnate the queens. Now, these queens, Vichitra Virya, before he died, he actually got married to Ambika and Ambalika. There's a long story with that also. But anyway, so he got married with them, and then after that, he died before he was able to have children. So therefore, they called Vyasadev, and according to the scriptural requirement, it was acceptable that Vyasadev were to have child. It's a royal emergency. It's an emergency, right? So for the emergency purpose, Ambika and Ambalika were to conceive a child from Vyasadev. Now Vyasadev was a Muni, and he was living in the forest, and he gave a boon to his mother Satyavati that whenever you need me, just think of me and I will appear. So Satyavati, out of desperation, she invoked her great son, Vyasadev. Now, Vyasadev is not an ordinary personality. He was actually the incarnation of the Supreme Lord also, Vyasadev. He's also called Vyasadvaipayana Krishna. So he's one of the incarnations of the Lord. So he's special, and he's actually the one who wrote all the Vedas. So that's Vyasadev. So anyway, out of this emergency, Satyavati called Vyasadeva, and Vyasadeva came, and she begged Vyasadeva to get children from Ambika and Ambalika. So when Ambika first came, now unfortunately this Vyasadeva, because he lived in a forest, he did not look very appealing. You know, his hair was all matted, and he was generally a bit scary looking, with long beard and all that. So then when Ambika was going to have the union with Vyasadeva, out of fright, she closed her eyes in fear. So because of this sin, now this Vyasadeva is a great personality. So the child which was born to Ambika was born blind. So Vyasadeva told Satyavati, don't worry, mother, I will give you this blessing that the children born from this union, they will be very, very powerful. They will be very great. But then due to this Ambika's mistake of closing her eyes, so therefore her child was born blind. But the other sister, Ambalika, was also nothing great. So she did not close her eyes, but because Dhritarashtra was, he was going to be born blind, so therefore they needed to have another conception. So therefore Ambalika was called this time, and Vyasadeva had a union with Ambalika. But Ambalika, out of fear, she became pale. So she didn't close her eyes, but she was opening her eyes, but out of fear, she became pale, puchat. So therefore the child who was born from Ambalika, whose name was Pandu, and this Pandu was born with a blood disease. He was generally not very healthy, and he would not live long. So this is the problem. So Dhritarashtra and Pandu. So Dhritarashtra born blind, so cannot have a child. Cannot be the king. So Pandu, the younger brother, became the king. So then after that, Dhritarashtra also got married. He got married to Gandhari, and with Gandhari, he got 100 sons, the Kauravas, right? And Pandu also got married. She got married to Kunti and Madri. So, and with them, unfortunately, Pandu also died early. So there's a story behind it. But anyway, Pandu died early, and his children are divinely born because Kunti had a special, gift. So, after Pandu died, again, succession problem. So no one to succeed the kingdom. Dhritarashtra is blind, so he cannot be the king. And Pandu's children has to be the king. So therefore, Kunti Devi invoked, she had a special mantra. By serving Durvasa Muni, she was able to please him very well, and Durvasa Muni gave her a boon, that you recite this mantra and think of the Devata, and that Devata will give you a child. So like that, she thought of Dharmaraj, Yamaraj, the Lord of Dharma, so the Lord of Death, and she was able to get Yudhishthira Maharaj. And then, so she was thinking, I need someone who is righteous, because the prince is going to be the king, and I need someone who is righteous and perfect. So therefore, who else but the Lord of righteousness himself, Dharmaraja or Yamaraj. So therefore, she thought of him and had Yudhishthira Maharaj was born, who was just like Dharmaraj, extremely righteous personality. But then she thought, but righteousness alone may not be sufficient. We need someone to uphold that righteousness. We need strength. We need great strength to ensure that the righteousness is upheld. So then she thought of the Devata Vayudev. Vayudev is the god of air, wind, and he was very, very strong. So in that way, she got the child Bhima, who was also very, very strong. And then he thought, but strength alone is not sufficient though. So because ultimately it is in the field of battle that many things are decided. So I would need someone who is extremely powerful and expert in all forms of weaponry and cannot be defeated in battle. So then she thought of Indra, the king of heaven. And then, so in this way, they were able to conceive Arjuna. So then the thing is, after Kunti had these 3 children, she thought, Madri is also my co-wife, but Madri was not able to conceive a child. So therefore, Kunti thought, I will give this mantra, I will share this mantra to Madri. And in this way, Madri will also be able to conceive. So this Madri was also very intelligent. So she thought, I only have one chance with this mantra. So therefore, already the others were taken. So one more time only I have. So let me invoke the Ashwini twins. So these are Devatas also, and these are always together, Ashwini twins. So in this way, I will be able to get twin children. So she wanted more children, but she only had one mantra. So therefore, she thought of this. Let me get the twins. So these twins, therefore, they were born as Nakula and Sahadeva. So this is what happened. So then the problem is, these Pandavas were supposed to be the kings after Pandu. But the Kauravas, the sons of Dhritarashtra, headed by Duryodhana, they were not very happy about this. So, and they were always very envious. They could not accept that these 5 brothers were, because, when they came and lived with the kingdom, after Pandu died, Kunti being a widow, she came back to the kingdom, and Dhritarashtra was supposed to look after all of them as if they were his own children. But the Kauravas were always very envious of them, because these 5 children who are not ordinary, they were excelling in everything. They were the best. They were the best students. They were the best archers. They were the strongest, and they were the most intelligent, and they were the most loved by the people. So because of this, a lot of rivalry came into place, and out of extreme jealousy, this Duryodhana plotted to kill them. So he tried, even when they were children itself, he tried to kill them. So he tried to do many things. He tried to give them poison, but that failed. Then he tried to burn them alive in a palace. He tried to trick them and put them in a palace and burn them alive. But that also failed, thanks to Vidura and Krishna. And then later on, he tried to, but in all these things that he tried to do, this Dhritarashtra was also part of the plan. The king, the Dhritarashtra, the blind king, he was also part of the plan. He didn't want to do it, but at the same time, he had this desire that my children should be kings. So because of this, Duryodhana was able to convince him. And in this way, he was always supporting. So anyway, long story short, many situations like this, and eventually the kingdom was also cheated away from the Pandavas, and a lot of things happened. And then the war, Mahabharata war, was about to take place. So this is what happened. So this is the background story of the Mahabharata war in brief. It's a very long story. There's an entire serial made out of it. But this is basically the summary. So anyway, it's all part of the Lord's plan, because the Lord wanted to destroy all these demonic kings who were taking over the earth. So, in the beginning of Bhuma Devi, she approached Lord Vishnu in the form of a cow, and she told Lord Vishnu, there are so many demons in this earth. I cannot bear the burden anymore. Can you please help me? And then when she first asked the Devatas and Lord Brahma, then Lord Brahma said, okay, let us all go to Shvetadweep, the shores of the Milk Ocean, and let us call out to the Supreme Lord. So in this way they called. Then Lord Vishnu, he assured Bhuma Devi, don't worry, in the Supreme Lord, myself will come and we will remove all this burden from this earth. So that's why Mahabharata war came to take place. But at the same time, he also knows that, Kali Yuga is coming. People are going to be very much different. They are going to be very much degraded in the future. A lot of things are going to happen. So how are people going to understand religion and religiosity? So therefore, people are not going to be so inclined to read the Vedas, or they're not going to be they're not able to understand the Vedas. It's very high Sanskrit and everything. So what will I do? So therefore, the solution is Mahabharata. The Mahabharata is a huge, grand soap opera, right? And in this, because people like soap opera, people like to hear a good gossip, isn't it? They like to have a good, in the Mahabharata is full of it. It has every element of a soap opera that you could ask for. Every element of a serial is there. They have different kinds of marriages, this all kinds of intrigue. This person married that person married this person, and then this person wants to kill that person wants to kill this person. So all kinds of intrigue is there. And at the and in a soap opera, in a drama or in a serial, where do you get the peak of it? The peak of it comes at the climax. And what's the climax? The climax is the war, right? Like probably some of you might have watched Infinity War, right? The Avengers and all that thing. So the climax is the war. People want to know what's going to happen. So in the same way, this is the Mahabharata war, which took place, and all the people in the world, all the Kshatriyas in the world were involved in this war. And this is the climax. Everybody is very excited. Nobody wants to go to the bathroom. We are watching a TV, watching serial. They don't want to go to the bathroom at this time. They want to ensure they are glued to the screen. So when they are so glued to the screen, at that time, Krishna gives the Bhagavad Gita. When the interest of the people is at its maximum and at its peak, at that time, the Bhagavad Gita is spoken, so that maximum retention is taken by the people who hear it. So that is Krishna's master plan, to give the Bhagavad Gita. Somehow, by hook or by crook, to give this knowledge to the people. So that's how he started. Okay, so we go back to this verse, right? I'm looking at the time, it's almost 9, so we have a bit more time. Let me just quickly go through. So this is the verse, Dhritarashtra Uvacha, Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre. So now this Dhritarashtra, he's asking. Now he did not go to the war because he's blind. So he's staying back, and he's asking his secretary Sanjaya. He has a secretary, and this secretary is called Sanjaya. And this Sanjaya has a special ability. He is able to visualize anywhere in the world. He is able to he has this special power. This special power was given to him by Vyasadev. And Vyasadev gave him this blessing that he will be able to see anywhere and hear anyone speaking anywhere, right? It's like a CCTV. So he has a built-in CCTV in his mind. So therefore, Dhritarashtra asked Sanjaya, can you please tell me, Sanjaya, after going to this battle place, what did they try to do? So in this way, he discussed. So Dhritarashtra, therefore, he's shown here to be partial to his family. As a king, brother of, Pandavas and Kauravas were both Kuru, were both part of the family. But here it's clearly seen, he separates Pandu's sons and Kurus, right? Pandavas Chaiva, Mamaka, my sons and the sons of Pandu, he separates them. So this is not a very nice thing to do when he's taking care of his dead brother's children, right? He's supposed to look after them as his own children. But here he is separating them. So his mind is revealed. He is partial. He is not fair. And he didn't want them to not compromise in the fighting. He wanted them to continue fighting, so that he wanted an end to this. And he was scared, he was afraid. That's why he said Dharma Kshetre. Kurukshetra is a holy place, a place of pilgrimage. And he was afraid that, if you are having a war in a holy place, how will that affect my sons? My sons are not virtuous. They are very, very evil. He knows that, right? But at the same time, he wanted his sons to be the king also. And he wanted them to win. So in this way, he was scared. He was fearful. Therefore, he asked Sanjaya, please tell me, what did they do? He was in anxiety. So in this way, we discussed all the lineage, okay? And like that, the verses So from verses 1.14 to 1.20. Now in this 18 days session, we cannot go through every single verse because there are 700 verses. So we will speak about them in sections. And then some verses we will highlight, and the rest of it we will just paraphrase in sections about what they are about. Okay. So in verses 1.14 to 1.20, the signs of victory are given. So here the signs of victory starts with this verse. Panchajanyam Hrishikesho Deva Dattam Dhananjaya Paundram Dadmau Mahashankam Bhima Karna Vrikhodaraha. Lord Krishna blew his conch shell called Panchajanya. Arjuna blew his conch shell, the Devadatta, and Bhima, the voracious eater and performer of Herculean task, blew his terrific conch shell. So these are all described as signs of victory. So in other words, Sanjaya is trying to tell Dhritarashtra, look here, your sons are going to lose this war, guaranteed, right? And indirectly, actually directly also, he already told them many times, but now indirectly he's telling the signs of victory. So what are these signs of victory? First sign of victory is Dharma Kshetre. Remember the first verse? Dharma Kshetre Kurukshetre Samaveda Yuyuksavaha. So the first verse, Dharma Kshetre, holy place of pilgrimage. This should give you a hint, O Dhritarashtra, that your sons are going to lose. Then he mentions to Dhritarashtra that Madhava is on the other side. This Madhava is not ordinary. He is Krishna, and he is known as Madhava. Madhava means husband of the goddess of fortune. And that means fortune is on the other side. And not only fortune is on the other side, Krishna himself is on the other side. So where else is there victory for you? Although Krishna promised in this Mahabharata war that he will not fight. We don't have time for that story today. I will mention that story some other time. So Krishna will not fight in that Mahabharata war. He is simply going to act as a charioteer. So therefore, and then the chariot also is special. In the Bhagavad Gita, the verses, it will say that the chariot is special chariot given by Agni Dev. So the speciality of this chariot is it cannot be broken. It cannot be destroyed. So this is also another indication of victory. And then here, this particular verse, Panchajanyam Rishikesho, this particular verse which we just said, these are Divya Shanka. So the Shank or the conch shell is a sign of victory. So, you know, Vastu and all that, Feng Shui and all that. So they like to keep Shanka. So it's a sign of fortune and a sign of victory. And it represents Lord Krishna, because Lord Krishna or Vishnu, Lord Vishnu carries the Shanka Chakra Gada Padma, right? So therefore, where is this? And when they mention Shanka, that means it is victory on the other side. And Divyam, this Shanka is called Divyam, transcendental. That means it is not material, it is spiritual. It is beyond matter. So again, indicating special plus points on the other side. And then there is also another sign of victory, Kapi Dwaja. Kapi Dwaja means the flag on top of Arjuna is a very special flag. There's a long story how Hanuman once met Arjuna, and then Hanuman agreed to come inside the flag of Arjuna, and in this way bless Arjuna with victory. So Hanuman is in the flag of Arjuna. So Kapi Dwaja. Kapi Dwaja means the monkey flag, where Hanuman is in the flag. That's also another sign of victory, because when Hanuman was with Rama, then Rama also attained victory. So in the same way, the same Hanuman is now here. So therefore, Dhritarashtra, victory is on the other side. And then there is also the special bow. Now, you know, Arjuna, he is ambidextrous. He is called Savya Sachin, one of the names of Arjuna, Savya Sachin. Ambidextrous means he can fight with both hands. That means he's right hand and a lefty, both also. He can equally shoot the bow with the right hand, and he can equally shoot the bow with the left hand. So he's ambidextrous, and his bow is not ordinary also. It's a heavenly bow. It's called Gandiva. So therefore, with all these, the signs of victory, it favors the Pandava side. So these are signs of victory given. And then what happens here, this chapter is called Arjuna Vishada Yoga, right? Where Arjuna is put into lamentation, or he's put into illusion. So this is how it happens. From verses 1.21 to 1.26, what will happen is Arjuna will ask Krishna. Krishna is the charioteer, and he will ask Krishna. Arjuna said, "O infallible one, please draw my chariot between the two armies so that I may see those present there who desire to fight and with whom I must contend in this great trial of arms." So he is asking Krishna. Of course, he already knows. He already knows who he's fighting with, But still, somehow, Krishna put this desire in Arjuna's heart, and Arjuna decided to, sometimes I just want to see, who all have come here. We have to fight. I know it's very bad. We have to fight, but who all have come here? Let me have a look at them. So therefore, then Krishna brought the chariot right in the middle of the army, and he brought him right in front of very important people, namely Bhishma and Drona. Bhishma and Drona were in the side of the Kauravas. Why they were in the side of the Kauravas? There is a reason behind that also. We won't talk about that now. We are not discussing Mahabharata. We want to go more into Bhagavad Gita. So I'm just giving all this as a background, right? So the point here is, when Arjuna went in front of Bhishma and Drona, he became completely disturbed in his mind, because Arjuna loved Bhishma very much. He loved Bhishma like his grandfather. And he loved Drona because Drona was his teacher and he was his favorite pupil. And he loved Drona very much, just like as a teacher, and he loved him very greatly. But not only in front of Bhishma and Drona, he started to see all the other people who were in front of him. So Arjuna became overwhelmed. Why? Because he saw grandfatherly figures like Bhishma and other types of grandfather from this maternal side grandfathers, like Somadatta. So these were grandfatherly figures, all in the Kaurava side, ready to fight and kill the Pandavas. And then he also saw father-like figures like, Burishrava. These are great personalities. Don't worry if you don't know these personalities. You have to go through Mahabharata. But to understand Bhagavad Gita, we don't have to know Mahabharata. So this is just a background, right, on setting the scene. So chapter 1 begins like that. But after that onwards, it will talk about other things. So then he also saw teacher figures like Dronacharya, Kripacharya. They were all in the other side. And he saw brothers like Duryodhana and all the other brothers. He saw sons like Lakshmana, not his own sons, but people who he considered just like sons from the Kaurava party. He saw friends like Ashwatthama, like many other people in the other side. And he also saw well-wishers, all caught in the other side of the party. Now, this Duryodhana was very cunning. He did a lot of cunning things in order to catch all these people and put them in his side. Some of them were tricked. Some of them had to do it out of duty. Some of them, they had obligations. So in this way, they were all tricked. And some of them made their own choices also, but out of certain obligations and duty. Bhishma, because he had vowed that he will always support the throne, no matter who is sitting on it. And then Dronacharya, because he had been maintained by Duryodhana. So therefore, and there's a story behind that also. But anyway, so what happened was Arjuna, he saw so many people who he cared for, so many people who he loved, all of them ready right in front of him, ready to kill him and his brothers. And he became completely bewildered in his mind. So therefore, this is like Arjuna showing how we are also sometimes disturbed with reversals in life. when we have situations in life, when we go through life, right, we become disturbed with our duty also. What is right duty? What is the right thing we need to do when we are having situations like this? So this is how Arjuna felt. And because of all this, Arjuna had very severe symptoms. So he was so disturbed in his mind, he absolutely started shaking, not out of fear, but out of grief, out of extreme lamentation and grief. So therefore, from verses 1.27 to 1.46, Arjuna will display his many symptoms of grief, symptoms of misery. These are all symptoms of extreme misery and extreme grief. So, and it is described that he actually experienced all the grief in the world at that time, one shot. So, we also go through different situations in life. We also go through different aspects of grief. And then we become sometimes confused what to do, what is right, what is wrong. So what are these symptoms? Limbs of my body are quivering, shaking limbs. My mouth is drying up. My whole body is trembling. My hairs are standing on end. My Gandiva bow is slipping from my hand. My skin is burning. I'm unable to stand here any longer. I'm forgetting myself. My mind is reeling. I see only causes of misfortune. So these are Arjuna's symptoms. So this is basically reflecting humanity also at large, right? When we also go through these kind of symptoms, how do we deal with situation? How do we deal with life? So it's setting the scene. So Krishna has covered Arjuna with this illusion to set the scene for us so that Bhagavad Gita can be spoken. And then from verses 1.27 to 1.46 also, not only the symptoms, Arjuna starts giving reasons why he didn't want to fight after that already. He told Krishna, oh Krishna, enough of all these things. I don't think I can take it anymore. I don't want to fight. So he gave many reasons. And one of these are, actually he gave 5 reasons. So here I'm putting all those 5 reasons, right? The first reason, he said, out of compassion, I cannot fight them. These are my relatives. These are my family members. Simply for kingdom, I cannot fight them, right? What will happen? How can I kill these people? These are people worthy of my prayers. They are worshipable. They are my seniors. They are my friends. So, and if I kill them, then I'm a hard-hearted person. So therefore, out of compassion, he gave a reason of compassion. And then Arjuna gave a reason of he told Krishna, even if I win this war at the cost of the deaths of all these people, I cannot, how can I live my life? How can I live with this kingdom? My hands are stained with blood. So I cannot live like this. So I can get no enjoyment. So, even if I get this kingdom, what's the point? So I don't want to fight. So that is a second reason he gives. Very pertinent reasons. We will be very much inclined to agree, right? But Krishna will defeat all these reasons in Bhagavad Gita. He will give Arjuna the reasons why all these things are invalid. And then Arjuna will continue. He said, I'm scared of sin. If I kill people who are worthy of my worship, like my teacher, Drona, if I kill my grandfather, Bhishma, who I have so much of affection, who we owe so much to him for, right? What will happen to us? Sin will overcome us, right? And then he also says, in this war, so many millions of people have joined in this army. Actually, it's described that millions of people were assembled in this war. Now, isn't war generally bad? So why should I fight? Why should so many people die? So therefore, won't this be sinful? So therefore, he said, no, I cannot fight. And then he gave the 4th reason, destruction of family tradition. He said, if so many people, all the Kshatriyas, all the leaders, all the husbands and the fathers have all assembled in this war. And if they all die, what will happen to the family? Who is going to take care of the family tradition, right? Because the ladies who are now unprotected by their husbands or by their sons or brothers, what's going to happen? They will be taken advantage of. They will be exploited. And when that happens, what will happen to the children? The children will also be exploited, and illegitimate children will be born. So then what will happen? Culture is destroyed, tradition is destroyed, dharma is eventually destroyed, because none of these things are being followed, and eventually everything will go towards hell. So therefore, I cannot be a reason for this, Krishna. How can I fight? So this is the fourth reason which he gives. And then this is the fourth reason. And then later on in chapter 2, he gives one more reason. So we won't go into that at this time. But just to help you remember the reasons, you can remember them in this acronym, CESDI. The I we will tell you later. So it is CESD. C for compassion, E for enjoyment, S for sin, D for destruction of family traditions. So it's just like some keywords. It's just a simple way of remembering it. Don't worry, there are no exams or anything like that. It's just a way to quickly remember. So it's CESD. So in this way, chapter 1 ends. 46 verses in chapter 1. And chapter 1 closes with Arjuna finally sitting down on his chariot and letting his Gandiva bow, putting it down. And when the people saw this, the Kauravas, Duryodhana became happy. He thought, oh, this is interesting, because without Arjuna, I do not think they will be able to win. So with that, we would like to give a summary of chapter 1. So here I'm giving you an overview of the subtopics which is given in chapter 1, right? If you read Bhagavad Gita chapter 1, there are many subtopics. So it begins with the anxiety. So Bhagavad Gita is given for everyone who is in this world, because everyone is in anxiety. So Dhritarashtra begins this chapter with anxiety. And then it goes on with 1.2 to 1.13, Duryodhana's diplomacy. So Duryodhana starts speaking after Dhritarashtra speaks. He will start trying to use manipulation and diplomacy to speak to Dronacharya and to speak to Bhishma. So we won't go through these things, this topic in this level 1, right? So as I said, we cannot cover everything. We will cover the more important aspects of it. This one is Duryodhana showing his diplomacy. You can read it on your own also, and we can also discuss anything if you have any questions on that. But basically here, Duryodhana goes to Dronacharya and he tries to convince Drona and tries to convince Bhishma in a very clever way that he should now fight with these people, with these Pandavas, and give them no quarter, no mercy. You should fight them without hesitancy. And then from verses 1 from 1.14 to 1.20 are the signs of victory. So this we covered already. We talked about the signs of victory. Remember, Madhava, the husband of the goddess of fortune, Krishna, both are on the other side. And then the chariot of Arjuna, given by Agni. And then the Kapi Dwaja, the flag, Hanuman flag. And then also the transcendental conch shells, the blowing of the conch shells, which are transcendental, which also represent Lord Vishnu. And in this way, they are all on the other side. And Dharma Kshetre, Kurukshetre, holy place of pilgrimage. These are all signs of victory. And when the conch shells were blown, it's described in the Bhagavad Gita that the Kaurava side, their hearts were shattered. They became fearful when the conch shells were blown from the Pandava side. So these are all signs of victory. And then we heard about 1.21 to 1.26, viewing the army, how Krishna brought Arjuna right in the middle of the battlefield, and then Arjuna was able to view who all came to fight with it. And from then onwards, he became covered with illusion. He started to lament, Arjuna Vishada. 1.27, where he started to display the symptoms of misery, extreme disturbance of the mind, the different bodily symptoms was highlighted. And then we also heard about how he gave 5 different excuses. 4 excuses were given in chapter 1, and the 5th excuse he will give later on in chapter 2. So this is what we have covered in chapter 1 summary today. And tomorrow we will go on to chapter 2 in greater detail. Okay, so I hope that this has given us all a brief introduction to Bhagavad Gita. There's a lot to be spoken. It's really a challenge to actually cut down what I have to speak in order to just keep to the essence of it. Okay, so we'd like to end, before we start looking at questions, here we have a Bhagavad Gita kit. So this is, if you are interested to buy this, you can purchase this online. You can either go to this contact, you can scan the QR code, or you can go to this WhatsApp contact, or you can just also let me know and I can help you with the ordering of the kit. So what is in this kit? So this kit contains, it's a special price actually, because Bhagavad Gita, if you buy just the Bhagavad Gita alone, it is 35 ringgit. So here you get, with the Bhagavad Gita, you also get chanting beads with the bead bag, and you also get 2 other books and a small photo. So if you purchase this kit, it comes in a special price of 56 ringgit, inclusive of postage. Now, I'm not saying that you need to buy this. It's just that along the way, if you feel like you want to, you can, right? So I'm just promoting this from our temple. And this is a certificate course. You will get a certificate at the end of this 18 days course. And for this certificate, you need to do the quiz. So we will send the link for the quiz in a while after this class, and you just have to click on it, and it's just 5 minutes at the most. You can easily finish the quiz, and in this way we will be able to capture that you have seriously taken this course, and we will issue the certificate for you. But in the end, certificates are not really that important. It's the understanding, but it's just for those that matters. It will be nice. Even if it doesn't matter, please do sit for the quiz, because we will have a sort of a graduation ceremony at the end, and it will be nice if your names are captured also. Okay, so then this is the map of the temple for those of you who may be interested to join our Sunday feast. We have a Sunday feast every Sunday. Of course, now with the COVID and all that, but we are going to open the temple from the 3rd of October onwards for double vaccinated people. And if you are interested to go, you can. Prasadam will be served, deity darshans will be there. But the usual program is not there. This is just more of a darshan. You just go, take darshan, take prasadam, and you can leave. Normal days, we have a full program. All right, so we are done. So I have exceeded the time a little. Very sorry for that. Right, so any questions, anyone? Let me just look at the chat while we are going through. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Sorry, Prabhu. This list fixed.
Sorry, I couldn't catch you. Could you repeat it again?
Yes. Is this attendee list fixed, or can we invite?
Okay. Well, since we just started today, up to
This
another.
course?
Yeah. Okay. Since we just started today, we can continue adding people for another 2 days. We don't want them to miss too much. So first day, okay. Second day, I think they can catch up. So if you have anyone else who'd like to join, you can let me know, or you can let the admin know, and we can. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone else? Any questions on this? Okay, so I think it went all right, I hope. So if there's any feedback also, the quiz, you can also give your feedback on the quiz. If there's anything you'd like to see included or whatever. But this is just the first session. Look at the second session from tomorrow onwards, and we will go more in detail with the Gita itself. Okay, so with that, we'd like to end. Thank you very much. Did anyone raise their hands? Okay, if there's nothing further, so we'd like to end. So Hare Krishna, see you all again tomorrow. I will release the recording of this session as well in the group later on. Okay, hope you enjoyed that. See you again tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you very much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Bol.